Imagine waking up tomorrow with the quiet but nagging thought, why do I always fall back into the same patterns? Maybe you've promised yourself to exercise, or to eat better, or to stop procrastinating on that side project. And yet, despite all the effort and motivation at the start, weeks later, you find yourself right back where you began. It feels discouraging, like change is always temporary, always slipping through your fingers. But what if the problem isn't you? What if the real problem is the system you're using? This is the central idea of James Clear's Atomic Habits, a book that has transformed millions of lives by showing that small, consistent changes, when designed correctly, create massive results over time. And in the next 20 minutes, we're going to explore how this works, why most self-improvement fails, and what you can do differently starting today. The reason this book matters is simple. Everyone has goals. Everyone has dreams. But goals don't separate the winners from the losers. Systems do. James Clear argues that while goals set the direction, it's your daily habits, the atomic units of your behavior that determine whether you actually get there. And once you understand how habits are formed, broken, and reshaped, you realize change isn't about willpower or motivation. It's about creating an environment and identity where good habits become inevitable and bad ones become nearly impossible. Think of a habit like a seed. It looks small, almost insignificant. But when you plant it in fertile soil and nurture it over time, it can grow into a tree that shapes the entire landscape of your life. Most of us ignore the seed because we're focused on the tree we want to have. We want the six-pack, the finished book, the thriving career. But Atomic Habits reminds us that the tree is just the natural outcome of the seed, multiplied by time. If you want a better outcome, you start by planting better seeds. Now let's dive into the core lessons that make this book so powerful. The first big lesson is the principle of compounding. James Clear explains that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Just like money multiplies through compound growth, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them over time. If you can get just 1% better each day, you'll be 37 times better in a year. But the reverse is also true. Small negative choices compound as well. Missing one workout, eating one extra slice of cake, or hitting snooze once doesn't matter. But repeat that pattern daily, and you've built a system for decline. To see this in real life, imagine brushing your teeth. You don't see much difference after one day of brushing. But after a year, the difference between brushing daily and not brushing at all is massive. One choice seems invisible in the short term, but it becomes unavoidable in the long term. The same is true with your habits. They are invisible forces shaping your trajectory. That's why Clear insists, focus less on outcomes, more on the processes that lead to them. The second lesson is identity-based habits. This is where the book departs from traditional self-help. Most people focus on what they want to achieve. Like, I want to run a marathon. But Clear suggests a different approach. Focus on who you want to become. Instead of asking, what do I want to achieve? Ask, who is the type of person that could achieve this? Then start proving it to yourself with small wins. For example, instead of setting a goal to run a marathon, you could shift your identity to, I'm a runner. That identity reshapes the choices you make daily. You don't need to force yourself to run 5 miles. Instead, you ask, what would a runner do today? Maybe the answer is as small as lacing up your shoes and jogging for 2 minutes. Each action becomes a vote for the type of person you want to become. The more votes you cast, the stronger that identity becomes. And identity is powerful because it's sticky. We naturally act in alignment with who we believe we are. To bring this idea closer, think about someone who tries to quit smoking. If they say, no thanks, I'm trying to quit, they're still holding on to the identity of a smoker who's struggling. But if they say, no thanks, I don't smoke, the identity is already shifted. The behavior follows the belief. The third lesson is about the 4-step habit loop. Every habit, good or bad, follows the same cycle. Cue, craving, response, reward. The cue triggers your brain to start the behavior. The craving is the motivation behind it, the desire to change your internal state. The response is the actual habit, the action you take. And the reward is the outcome that teaches your brain whether this habit is worth repeating. Understanding this loop is essential because it allows us to rewire habits by changing one or more of the steps. Clear formulates this into the 4 laws of behavior change. 1. Make it obvious. 2. Make it attractive. 3. Make it easy. 4. Make it satisfying. Let's unpack each one with examples. To make a habit obvious, you need to design your environment so the cues for good habits are visible and unavoidable, while the cues for bad habits are invisible. Want to eat healthier? Don't just rely on discipline. Put fruit on the counter and hide the cookies in the pantry. Trying to practice guitar? Keep it in the middle of your living room, not tucked away in a closet. Our environment shapes us more than our motivation. As Claire says, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. The second law, make it attractive, works because habits are a dopamine-driven feedback loop. The more appealing a habit feels, the more likely you are to repeat it. One strategy is called temptation bundling. Pair something you need to do with something you enjoy. For example, only watch your favorite show while working out on the treadmill. Suddenly, the workout becomes more appealing. The third law, make it easy, is about reducing friction. We often assume success requires massive effort, but the truth is, the easier a habit is, the more likely it will stick. Want to start flossing? Let's commit to flossing one tooth. It sounds ridiculous, but it lowers the barrier to entry, and once you start, momentum takes over. Mentally, if you want to stop a bad habit, increase friction. Delete the apps that waste your time. Unplug the console when you're trying to study. Make the default choice the better one. And finally, the fourth law, make it satisfying because behavior that's immediately rewarding gets repeated. This is tricky because many good habits have long-term rewards, but short-term pain, while bad habits are the opposite. Eating fast food feels great now, but hurts later. Going for a run feels tough now, but pays off later. To hack this, you need to add instant gratification to your good habits. Track your progress, check off a calendar, or celebrate small wins. The immediate sense of satisfaction reinforces the loop. Let's pause here and reflect on how these lessons shift our mindset. Before, we might have thought change was about discipline, about pushing harder, or relying on motivation. But what Atomic Habits shows is that discipline fades, motivation is unreliable, and willpower is finite. Systems, on the other hand, are sustainable. By shifting from "I need to force change" to "I need to design change," we unlock a different way of living. And what's even more powerful is how these lessons ripple through all areas of life. Imagine applying the 4 laws not just to your health, but to your relationships. What if you made kindness obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying? Imagine your career. What if you made learning new skills obvious by keeping a book on your desk? Attractive by associating it with growth, easy by reading just one page, and satisfying by tracking your progress. Suddenly, improvement isn't a grind. It becomes inevitable. This brings us to the practical side. What can you do today to begin applying Atomic Habits? Start small. It's very small. Clear calls this the 2-minute rule. Any new habit should take less than 2 minutes to do. Want to start running? Just put on your shoes and step outside. Want to read more? Just read 1 page. The goal isn't to succeed today. The goal is to master the art of showing up. Because a habit must be established before it can be improved. So here's a simple action you can try immediately. Think of one area you've been struggling with, maybe fitness, or productivity, or learning. Then ask, what's the smallest version of the habit I can do in 2 minutes? That's your starting point. From there, let time and repetition compound the effect. Now, as we close part 1 of this journey through Atomic Habits, let's pull together the key threads. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. They shape your identity, and your identity shapes them in return. Every habit follows a predictable loop of cue, craving, response, and reward. And by following the 4 laws, make it obvious. Attractive, easy, and satisfying you can rewire your behavior without relying on motivation. This isn't about overnight transformation. It's about small, consistent steps that create unstoppable momentum over time. When you focus on the system, the outcomes take care of themselves. And when you shift from achieving goals to becoming a certain type of person, change stops being something you force. and starts being something you live. We've explored how small habits compound, how identity shapes behavior, and how the 4 laws of behavior change allow us to build better systems. But there's another side to habits breaking, the ones that hold us back. Because if good habits are the compound interest of success, bad habits are the compound interest of failure. James Clear reminds us that to break a habit, you simply invert the 4 laws. 1. Make it invisible. 2. Make it unattractive. 3. Make it difficult. 4. Make it unsatisfying. Think of your phone for a moment. If you want to reduce screen time, you might start by making the cue invisible, putting the phone in another room while you work. Then you make it unattractive by reminding yourself of what excessive scrolling does to your focus and mood. Next, you make it difficult by uninstalling apps or setting screen time locks. And finally, make it unsatisfying by holding yourself accountable, maybe by telling a friend or using apps that block you after a certain limit. This works because habits don't just vanish. They're replaced, reshaped, and redesigned by altering the cues, cravings, responses, and rewards that drive them. But here's the deeper truth. Often, the habits we're trying to break are tied to a sense of comfort, of identity, or of coping. They aren't just behaviors. They're solutions to a problem, even if they're poor ones. That's why Clear emphasizes compassion. Breaking a habit isn't about blaming yourself. It's about designing an alternative system that better meets the need you were trying to satisfy. Now, even when you design good habits and eliminate bad ones, you'll eventually face something that discourages many people: the plateau of latent potential. This is the valley where it feels like you're working hard, showing up every day, and seeing almost no results. Imagine an ice cube sitting in a cold room. Temperature is 26 degrees, 25 degrees, and 24 degrees. Keep waiting, but the cube doesn't melt. Finally, the temperature hits 32 degrees, and suddenly it begins to turn into water. What's important to remember is that all the previous degrees weren't wasted. They were necessary to reach the breakthrough. This is the plateau of latent potential. Progress often feels invisible until it suddenly becomes undeniable. Most people quit in the valley, never realizing how close they are to transformation. But if you trust the process, if you stick to your systems, the results will come. This perspective alone is a game changer, because it shifts you from outcome obsession to process faith. You stop asking, "Where are my results?" and start asking, "Am I showing up for my system?" The results become a byproduct of consistency. But let's move to another powerful insight from Atomic Habits: the role of the environment. Many people believe they lack motivation, when in reality, they lack clarity and design. Your environment is the invisible hand that shapes your behavior. If you want to change your surroundings. Think about grocery stores. They place candy near the checkout lines, not by accident, but because your environment makes the cue obvious at the exact moment your resistance is lowest. In the same way, you can design your own environment to work for you, not against you. Want to play more guitar? Keep it on a stand in the middle of the room? Want to read more? Put a book on your pillow in the morning, so it's waiting for you at night. Want to cut down on soda? Don't buy it in the first place. Clear also suggests the environment trumps motivation because humans are remarkably sensitive to context. You may be disciplined at work but lazy at home simply because each place carries a different set of cues. That's why one of the best strategies is to assign habits to specific environments. Study at the library, not in bed. Exercise at the gym, not in the living room. The environment reinforces the habit. Another underestimated influence is the people around you. We are wired to imitate 3 groups in particular: the close, the many, and the powerful. If you want to change your habits, join a group where your desired behavior is the norm. Want to get fit? Spend time with people who treat fitness as natural. Want to start a business? Surround yourself with entrepreneurs. Social norms are one of the strongest forces in human behavior, and they can either anchor you to mediocrity or lift you toward growth. Let's take a step back. By now, we've covered the mechanics of building good habits and breaking bad ones, the importance of systems over goals, and the invisible role of the environment. But perhaps the most subtle, yet most transformative idea in Atomic Habits is the concept of identity. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you want to become. Reading one page is a vote for being a reader. Writing one paragraph is a vote for being a writer. Going for a 5-minute walk is a vote for being an active person. The power of this perspective is that it no longer matters how small the action is. Each vote counts. And over time, your identity shifts to match the sum of your votes. Of course, no one vote will define you. But together, they create a pattern. That's why change feels difficult at first, because you're casting votes for a new identity, and the old one still has more weight. But as the balance shifts, you start to see yourself differently. And once you see yourself differently, your behavior follows naturally. This is why Clear encourages people to stop obsessing over goals like, I want to lose 20 pounds, and instead focus on becoming the kind of person who doesn't miss workouts. Weight loss will follow. But the identity, once built, sustains itself. Now, let's ground this in practice. How can you start designing your habits today in a way that sticks? Here are a few simple, actionable steps. Pick one habit you want to build and apply the 2-minute rule. Reduce it to the smallest version possible. If you want to meditate, start with one deep breath. If you want to write, start with one sentence. Use habit stacking. Attach a new habit to an existing one. For example, after I brush my teeth, I will floss one tooth, or after I pour my morning coffee, I will write down one thing I'm grateful for. Existing habits act like anchors, helping new ones stick. Track your habits. Use a notebook, calendar, or app. Each checkmark becomes a small reward, a visible reminder of progress. It transforms an invisible process into something tangible. And finally, embrace the identity shift. Instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, say, I'm becoming the type of person who runs daily. Each of these small actions compounds. They're not about massive change overnight, but about creating a system where improvement is inevitable. Let's return to the bigger picture. Why does all of this matter? Because habits aren't just about productivity or health. They're about freedom. When you automate the right behaviors, you free your mind to focus on what truly matters. You're no longer trapped in cycles of guilt, procrastination, or inconsistency. Instead, you create a life where positive behavior is the default, not the exception. Imagine waking up in a house designed for your best self. The guitar is waiting in the living room. The fruit is on the counter. The phone is charging in another room. Your journal is open on the desk. Without relying on motivation, without needing to summon discipline, your environment nudges you gently toward the person you want to be. This isn't theory. This is the everyday reality of habits, stacked one on top of another. So as we close this journey through atomic habits, remember, transformation is not about radical overnight change. It's about planting seeds and letting time do its work. It's about small actions repeated consistently until the compound effect becomes undeniable. If you feel stuck, remind yourself, you're not failing. You're just in the plateau of latent potential, waiting for your breakthrough. If you feel discouraged, remind yourself. Habits are votes, and every small win is tipping the scale in favor of your future self. If you feel lost, remember, focus less on outcomes, more on systems, and the outcomes will take care of themselves. The question is not, can I change? The question is, am I willing to show up today? Because showing up is the doorway to transformation. And that's the beauty of habits. They're not just behaviors. They're the architecture of identity. They're the building blocks of freedom. They're the quiet, invisible force shaping the life you're destined to live. So as you leave this video, carry one thought with you. The person you dream of becoming is not far away. They are built one habit at a time, one vote at a time, one system at a time. You don't have to do everything. You just have to begin. And when you begin, trust that time will multiply your efforts, turning small wins into unstoppable momentum. The future self you imagine is waiting not in the distant future, but in the daily choices you make, here and now. We've only scratched the surface of what habits can do, but you now hold the blueprint. The rest is practice, patience, and persistence. Keep showing up. Keep casting votes, building the person you want to become. And as always, stay curious, because the journey doesn't end here. The next idea, the next perspective, the next step in your self-improvement journey is waiting. And when it arrives, you'll be ready to receive it.